Welcome to Age Hackers, powered by Gladden Longevity with Dr. Jeffrey Gladden, where our passion is to help you live young for a lifetime. On this show, we want to help you optimize your longevity, health, and human performance with impactful and actionable information by answering three questions. How good can we be? How do we make 100 the new 30? And how do we live well beyond 120? I'm Steve Reiter, and Dr. Gladden, we just got done with Loral Langemeier, who is the author of Making Millionaires and has a number of other books. And you brought her on specifically because you wanted to talk about wealth. If you're going to live young for a lifetime and you're going to live a long time, how do you maintain wealth and how do you take advantage of tax write-offs? And there was some really fascinating stuff in this one that I was blown away by.
Yeah, this is a super practical, it takes some time, attention, and resources, right, to buy supplements, buy equipment, do all this kind of stuff. And talking with Loral, she has strategies on basically how to set yourself up to do all this, through companies where you're, doing it with pre-tax dollars. And it saves a lot of money depending on your tax bracket and the state you live in, right? So this is, I think, a brilliant conversation. And she goes well beyond that into basically creating family wealth and generational wealth and how you train your children and not have them on the payroll, so to speak. It's really, really interesting conversation. I loved having this conversation. I think the audience is going to love it too.
And for those that are interested, once you listen to this, you can go to askloral.com/Gladden, and there are some freebies and some discounts and ways in which you can get in contact with her team.
Welcome, everybody, to this edition of the Age Hackers podcast, powered by Gladden Longevity. I'm your host, Dr. Jeffrey Gladden, and I'm here with my sidekick, compatriot, Colorado Extension, Steve Reiter. Steve, how are you?
I'm doing really well today, Dr. Gladden. What you got planned this weekend?
Mountain biking. I should talk about this for just a minute. People ask me a lot of times, what are you doing to stay young, right? Everybody knows I wake up 27 every day, which is true. I do. And I basically got a hold of a brain tap device. We did a podcast with Patrick Porter on the brain tap. And I started using it when I was on my Vasper machine. So I put myself into a gamma state, yes. And it was incredibly fascinating. I found my whole breathing synchronizing with my body motion in a different way. And I found my body synchronizing with itself in a different way. Yeah, because you go into a flow state when you're in gamma, right? So I thought, what a cool deal. I actually could feel things almost kind of realigning. So I went out on a mountain bike ride this morning here in Puerto Rico. It's a little warm down here. It was 88 degrees when I finished. And I've been building up my conditioning with the travel I've been doing. I do something every day, but I'd lost a little bit of my rhythm. And today I went out and rode this course, and I was able to clear every climb, every obstacle. And I think part of it was because my breathing was synchronized with my body motion. I had a new sense of perspective on the trail, and it was like easier to get into a flow state. So I'm going to do another Vasper tomorrow, because I'm super pumped to push in on this some further. And then I'm going to ride mountain bikes with a friend of mine, who's here on the island on Sunday, and just see what comes of that. So anyway, I think it's the idea of, if you feel like you're constantly improving at something and getting better, even though you can do it well, let's say,
yeah,
it's so fun, right? And that's a very youthful attitude, right? It's like, how do we do this better, right? So super fun stuff. Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah. So today we are privileged to have Loral Langemeier with us. And I met Loral at a Fab Mancini event in Dallas not too long ago. We hit it off really. And, we're going to exchange being on each other's podcasts here, so you can be on the lookout for that. But we're hosting Loral here first. And Loral is an expert in finance in a way that I really never heard before. So, if you're going to live a long time, you're going to need some money to do it. And you're going to have to be thinking about things a little differently. So, Loral, welcome to the Gladden Longevity Age Hackers podcast.
Oh, it's exciting to be here. And I love that conversation because Patrick and I are talking about taking my 3 Millionaire Maker books and putting them into Brain Tap.
Okay.
So I've been brain tapping for years, and I do my brain tap, just another little fun share.
Yeah.
So I have a a tube, an infrared sauna tube.
Yep.
So I'm in there for 20 minutes while I have my brain tap on my head, and I do that concurrently.
Nice.
But these rituals, these health rituals are so critical. And I think a lot of people who have a lot of longevity, I'm going to say health and wealth, have really great habits, like morning habits, health, spiritual, aligned morning habits.
100%. Yeah, 100%. I will say this too, that I've been using the brain tap more than once a day. So I did do it while I was on the Vasper, but then I did a Delta program for sleep at night. And even though I had a little bit of a rough night's sleep, I've had very high recovery scores, very high heart rate variability. So if you're in the audience and you're struggling to get your heart rate variability up, which is really the balance between your sympathetic, fight or flight nervous system and your parasympathetic, which is your rest, recovery, repair, I'm finding this to be a really nice hack to actually augment parasympathetic nervous system activity. So it's very cool in that way too. Good. So you're in your infrared. So you must come out of there very mellow.
Very mellow and hot. It's a lot of detox out of that one. It's good.
That's right. Good for you.
Yeah.
So Laurel, talk to us a little bit about, just briefly a little bit, because you've got a really interesting story that I think will give the audience some perspective on, the wisdom you have to share with them. Give us just a little bit of a run-in in terms of how you got to where you are. And I know there's many details to that, but just to give them a sense of context.
Yeah, I'll give them the short version. I grew up on a farm in Nebraska, went into finance, got the book Think and Grow Rich at 17. So that kind of started my journey of why so few people can make it, like really financially. I mean, becoming a millionaire is still, it was really defined, accredited investors were defined in 1933. So here we are, 2023, and it just doesn't seem like the code's ever cracked. So I really committed to how can I, from a very common sense, layman's term, bring all this financial, business, entrepreneurial, wealth building into just a common sense conversation. So I took a stint through the health world. I was an exercise physiologist. I think I shared with you. My internship was with Dr. Cooper in Dallas. So it was kind of fun.
Absolutely.
And then I built, with Chevron, I built 272 fitness centers on offshore oil rigs. So I took that whole corporate world and then was over it. Bob Proctor was my mentor at the time. And he said, 1996, he said, Laurel, you got to get to Scottsdale. You got to meet this guy and this lady, Robert Kiyosaki, Sharon Lechter, and the Rich Dad Poor Dad brand was born. So fast forward, a lot of my kind of training of jumping out of being in Chevron and corporate and health to I wanted to be in this space. And I spent those years, which I think a lot of people, if you're looking for your kind of career path, entrepreneurial path, work under someone else. I wouldn't have got where I did and get that deal with Chevron if I didn't have Cooper. Right. I mean, I've always had mentors, interns, like I take on interns. So fast forward, became a millionaire in real estate and gas and oil in 1999, became a single mom, walked into parenting as a single mom, not a victim. I think too many single parents are victims. And then McGraw-Hill found me and they contracted me to write the Millionaire Maker series. So I did 3. This one was a 2006 book. And then there's one on how to build a 7-figure business, how to invest. And then just last year, did the How to Make Your Kids Millionaires, which is really a parenting book.
Yeah.
It's more a conversation starter to, parents have got to start bringing this conversation in the household. It drives me crazy when I launched this book, Dr. Gladden, how many people said, the schools should be teaching this. No, they shouldn't.
No, they shouldn't.
They're not millionaires.
That's right.
They don't know money. That is not their jam. It is a parenting's job. So I have done a lot of business, a lot of transactions. I have a great mentoring and mastermind. And essentially I'm committed to not only making millionaires, helping families with a real conversation of money in their household.
It sounds like to me that you're really focused on financial literacy, if you will, because I think there's really a lack of financial literacy. I mean, everybody, they pay their taxes, they have an accountant, or they do this and that, but they really don't have financial literacy when it comes to actually understanding how money works or how to invest it or any of that kind of stuff, right? And so why don't you break that down for them a little bit, because you have so much wisdom in this area.
Yeah, I call it park and pray. Most people get really busy doing their business, their entrepreneurial jam or their employment, whatever they're doing to make the money. And then I call park and pray. They park their money with an accountant, hope it works out. They park the money with the financial planner, hope it works out. And so they actually have no learning. And as you know, I got, close to Tommy, Harris at that event. And I actually just had him on my podcast. And it's been interesting. He's one of the few NFL players who actually survived broke. He's one of the millionaires who kept millionaire status, because what happens is when you hand your power or lack of knowledge is really what you do to a licensed person, that's not your wealth plan. It's not your family's plan. It's not your charity plan. It's not your generational wealth plan. It's what they're going to do to get fees and commissions. So I just saw this big gap. And what I do differently is create, as you know, you heard my talk, I call it corporate life. So I don't teach a program. I teach a lifestyle. So when you're 18 years old, you can get a company. And when you make money, here's the easiest way I teach it, is individuals, like companies make money, and individuals get taxed. So if all your money's coming to you as an individual and not through a corporation, and then your company employing you aren't even activating the tax code. There's 81,000 pages of tax code in the United States. Like, people are overpaying taxes and not being strategically structured because they just hope somebody's going to do it for them.
Yeah.
And so I dig in behaviorally, and I help them really get to what's your corporate structure? Are you sure your companies are funded in your trust? Is all this done right now that you had abdicated the responsibility to somebody else? I help them educate and bring it back into their home.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I think in your talk, actually, you were talking about, I think your daughter had an LLC on a third day of life or something like that. Or I don't know. There was a mention of something like that.
Employed.
Pardon me?
They were employed at birth.
They were employed. Okay.
Got a Roth IRA, 4 years old, had little side hustles.
Yeah.
And then at 18, they get an LLC for their, they get signed into one of the LLCs for their birthday.
Okay.
Because then they start not only getting their own credit, they get corporate credit. I would go see my son play football at Georgia Southern, and I would just go watch my son. He was also a business partner. So I wrote off college in a very different way that most parents don't know how to put their kids through school.
Nice.
As a business partner.
Nice.
Not an expense.
Yeah.
So I have a lot of really what I call strategic tactics that are all legal and available. They're just not loudly spoke about.
Yeah. No, it's quite brilliant the way you're thinking about that. I had some elements of that going on as well with one of my daughters that was working for me at the time. So some of that made sense as well. But I wasn't thinking about it as quite as abstractly as you are. I was thinking about it more sort of concretely. But I think it's really kind of eye-opening. So when you think about people going through, this process of living young for a lifetime and taking care of their health and things like that, do you have any insight in terms of how people can pay for these things that are kind of out-of-pocket expenses that aren't covered by quote unquote sick care insurance?
Right in my wheelhouse.
Right. Okay. Beautiful.
Yes, because as a company, right? Like Loral Langemeier don't even have a phone, right? This is owned by one of my companies, right? This phone, and then I have another phone, another company. So like, I don't want the money. I want my companies to make money. Right. So let's just go over there and say, all right, you're going to live long for life. So if you live inside corporate structure and obviously there has to be an intent to make money. Every company's got to have a reason to make money. And you can do, like, I have CBD distributors. I've got, people that are in direct sales companies that sell lotions and potions. I don't care what the company is, even BrainTap. A lot of my students that are medical doctors, they needed that extra S Corp or C Corp. And so what they did is they actually added like BrainTap to their clinics, or they added some of the modalities that we were, at Fab's event. So by doing that, they now have a legal business. They can start activating the tax code as an officer and director, which means they need to actually be the officer or director inside the company. You can activate a huge part of the code that nobody talks about. It's called officer and director benefits. So as an officer and director, you can actually create your own health plan. So you can either have it defined as an HSA, your own defined benefit. So all of that is a corporate benefit, 100% deductible to the company. So, down to jewelry, wardrobe. You can write off wardrobe, you can write off your hair, your, makeup. All of these longevity modalities done properly with the right corporate resolutions is 100% deductible. Yep. Yes, your company has to make the money, but most people don't flow through like that. They'll just pay out of their personal checking account. It's like the wrong way.
Well, that's really interesting because it's also true for equipment. Like, let's say in my case, right, where I'm living young for a lifetime, I need a mountain bike. I'm going to go mountain biking. Well, the mountain bike is actually a business expense, right? Or the snowboard is a business expense, or a snowboard trip. All of it. Yeah, all of it. My whole life is a tax write-off, essentially. So, yeah.
Mine is too. I really want to emphasize that because I don't think people realize living corporate life, like you should never go on a vacation. Like
That's right.
you would always go on business trips. There's not one angle that you couldn't have me and our creative tax team. So what I did, the way that I'm structured, is I stay unlicensed and I surround myself by some of the best tax strategists and integrated specialists and corporate trusts, like every concept in money. And when you really fully activate an integrated wealth team, just like you have an integrated health team, now you have the full structure. But what I guess my, championing from the rooftop is families, not just one person, not the person making the money, families get involved in this conversation because your kids are going to inherit all this as well. And your kids are a big part of this wealth plan and your health plan.
This is a really interesting point. So kids inheriting money doesn't always work out so well, right? I mean, it can be as much of a curse, quite honestly, as it is an asset. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that kids don't know really what to do with it. They think it's there to be spent or that kind of thing. And they're not really focused on how do they do good in the world with this? And also, how do they leverage it to grow new companies and build new things? So in my own concept, and I'll run this by you, I know we're going to have a conversation later, but one of my concepts has been that, when I do pass at some point, that I really don't want to leave my kids money. What I want to leave them is opportunity. And so setting up sort of what I call the Gladden family bank, where they can borrow money from the bank for entrepreneurial activities, and then they can pay it back. If you do that generationally over time, you can have this run. All of a sudden, you can end up with like really a lot of financial resources to be able to leverage in very, very positive ways. That there can be a charter around in terms of what kinds of things the bank is going to actually be involved in. So there are ways to do this rather than just dropping, X number of dollars into a kid's lap and hope they figure it out, right? So what are your thoughts about that?
100%. In fact, the legal term, if you move it, actually making it a formal bank has a lot of restrictions around it. So making it a family office. And very similarly, through your trust structure, I mean, there's trusts and there's wills, and there's a massive misunderstanding that wills are enough. No, they're not. You're still going to go to probate. Half of everything you own is going to your state. It's actually a worldwide concept. Your province in Canada, the government's going to take their piece if you don't put a proper trust. So there's non-depletion trust, there's family office trust, there's all sorts of kind of different kinds of trusts where you can establish those loans, where they can take a loan, they have to write a business plan, but you get to describe the rules. And if you really look at the Rockefellers versus the Vanderbilts, the Rockefellers, that's what they did. I mean, it is a self-sustaining opportunity and charity machine. Right. The Vanderbilts just dispersed it. And guess what? When they had their last family reunion, not one was a millionaire. Not one. Because they just handed it to uneducated kids with even if you're going to hand them money, my kids are going to get some money, but it's very clearly defined on what they will and won't do or invest in. And they have other executors around, so they can't singly make a decision. The horrible statistic, you talk about longevity, generational wealth, it's so unplanned. It is so unplanned that it lasts 2.3 generations, which means your grandkids won't see the money.
That's right.
And then the other worst thing I see, and I just want to kind of speak to some of the families that are listening, is if there's, say, 5 kids, get 5 trusts and divide it before you die. Like, I don't know how many clients I have that had 1 trust, 5 kids, and they are at war. They all lawyered up. I just got a client last week. They got $4.9 million. The guy did this fraudulent, document basically saying mom and dad signed it. Well, they didn't. It was totally fraudulently done. Now the 4 girls are fighting the brother. Now whole family divided. So is that really how you want to walk off the planet, is have a war? I mean, it is number one cause of like sustainable wealth loss is an unplanned health issue. That's number one. Number 2 is unplanned generational wealth. So why do it? Why make these big impacts, have these technologies? And Dr. Gladden, the other piece, just having been to Fab's event and seeing the patents, like, do your kids know how to manage and sustain patents? If you look at Napoleon Hill, nobody talked about it in there. So Napoleon Hill is an open trademark. I don't know if anybody knows that. The copyrights expired. Everyone seized them and took them. So it's a pretty much open source kind of formula because they didn't do it right. No one taught them. And this isn't, and I just keep speaking this loudly, this isn't, oh, my lawyer's handling it. No, this is yours to handle. This is your legacy. This is your transfer of knowledge and wealth.
Yeah.
And, having been in The Secret, I just want to say this one, having been in The Secret, and you heard me say it and I scream loudly, especially as a woman, because women always back out and have this excuse of either my man's handling it or I just have mindset issues with it. It's like, no, you don't have a mindset issue. You have a lack of knowledge across the board, man or woman. It's a lack of knowledge, being an entrepreneur, being a wealth builder, and how to really lead a team.
Yeah.
It'd be like people going in and saying, well, I want surgery and you can do whatever you want. I don't want to know anything about it. That doesn't happen. You want to know stuff about your health.
This episode of the Gladden Longevity Podcast is brought to you by H2 Molecular Hydrogen in the Gladden Longevity Store.
Yeah, Steve, you've heard us talk about this numerous times on the podcast in terms of the benefits of H2 and hydrogen water. We love it. It's really the best way to balance your entire redox system. So it really protects you from free radical damage. I take it every time I get on a flight to protect me from radiation damage when I'm flying. And I use it to rejuvenate my brain in the afternoon. There's really two kinds of exercise. There's physical exercise, and taking H2 before or after that works great. But also there's mental exercise. And I find that the H2 will bring your brain back when you're tired in the afternoon. So I think it's like the perfect thing for longevity and for performance, quite honestly.
And I talked to you about this, that I found dropping 1 or 2 tablets in a glass of water right before bed. I've seen an overall bump in my deep sleep when I do so.
Fascinating. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you click on the store tab when you visit GladdenLongevityShop.com and use the promo code PODCAST10, you'll get 10% off your order. And this code isn't only good for our H2 product, but it's also good for all the supplements we carry. So podcast10 at the GladdenLongevityShop.com.
Yeah, one of the other things that I use it for routinely is when I'm about to go on a mountain bike ride. And I will say this, that if I go on a long mountain bike ride, I will take one prior, I'll take one during, and I'll take one after. And some of the Ironmen that we've worked with have said that when they're doing an Ironman, they'll take it 3 or 4 times throughout the race. And their comment is that it's like taking out the old battery and putting in a new one. It really rejuvenates your body's ability to perform when you're doing more extended athletic activity. So think about that too. If you want to go do a longer hike or whatever else, take it with you.
So GladdenLongevityShop.com, enter podcast 10 for 10% off your order.
H2 molecular hydrogen. It's low-hanging fruit on your quest to make 100 the new 30. Yeah, absolutely. No, I think if you're in this space, right? Well, no matter what space you're in, even if you're not in this space, I think actually getting educated, working with somebody that can actually put the team around you to be able to accomplish things that you'd like to accomplish, but you're not even sure how to articulate them in some cases, right? You're not even sure exactly how to organize them on top of articulate them. So I think this becomes a really critical thing. But I think a lot of people, find it intimidating, just like they find, cracking the code on aging or staying young very intimidating. It's a very intimidating thing, right? Because, they're not an expert, they're not a doctor, they're not a whatever. And so it's very intimidating, similar thing. So if you're really going to live young for a lifetime or live for a long time, you really have to kind of double down on time, attention, and resources to both your health and your wealth simultaneously. Not only to make sure it's there for you, but then, how's it going to go forward, right? So, yeah, really, really interesting.
Well, and like we said earlier, we can write off our, sports gear, and we can write off a lot of stuff, but that also is a large assumption that your company's making the money to pay those kind of bills.
That's right.
So
that's right.
There is a double down of, if you're going to live, if you're living longer, you need to create way more active income, which then investor right creates passive income. So there's a cycle to structuring that. Mm-hmm. And what I see, and unfortunately, I get people I think you get them probably a little more preventative. I think I get them when they're in a bloodbath. Mom died, dad died.
Okay.
Somebody's in a fight. I get them when they're like, oh, I knew you years ago. I should have done this. And it's like, well, shoulda, coulda. Now we're in court. Like, I deal with so many people. So there's a preventativeness to being way in front of it, which is really why, I wrote this. It's 87 steps. I'm actually going to encourage people to get it. It's 87 steps from 0 to 20 what I did with my kids.
Yeah.
And you don't have to do them all, but at least go back. And I don't care if you're 40. And I have some things in there between 0 and 5. Like if you don't have a Roth IRA, go get one. Like just go through the checklist and mark off like this is a sustainable base for your life. And then to me, it's, I think we have, a great alignment, same with Fab and a lot that were there, is we're here to make a big impact.
Yeah.
Like we have amazing gifts and talents to make huge impacts in the world. And, to me, that's what it is. It's a mission way beyond, myself and my family. This is affecting a lot of other families who need it.
Yeah. What I like about what you're saying is you're actually helping people also learn and how to understand not only how to save on taxes or this and that, but actually how to make money in the present moment, right? How to actually make them millionaires. I mean, this is kind of your tagline is millionaire maker, right? And so give us a little insight there. We've talked a little bit about generational wealth, but what are some of the key things that you see in helping people to actually become financially robust? Let's call it that.
Yep. Number one is make more money. We've been, all schooling is aligned. Like my son just got out of a finance and accounting bachelor's, just got his master's about a month ago in accounting. And again, his whole training is to make him an employee. And he needed to go do that because he's going to be a CPA and he will come run our family office. That's why I know where you're headed. That is the right structure for the trust and for the legacy money, I'm going to call it. So making money is the biggest part. So because again, you can be employed all your life. That's fixed income for the most part. I mean, commissionable salespeople, but you still have to activate a corporate structure to activate the tax code to do all this right. So making money is a huge piece. And I love helping people. I mean, 10X, I have some real estate people that went from, 10,000 a month to 100,000 a week, so making the money. But here's the biggest pattern. And this is the easiest way I teach it. Those who become millionaires faster, they make and invest. And they do their assets before their lifestyle. Those who take a very slow path, they're lifestyle junkies, and they make it, they spend it, and then they invest the little trickle left, and then they miss all the compounding power of money. So if you're willing to, spend later, like I had private jets, I've had everything I've ever wanted. I just make the money to have it. And I don't make it. I turned to my company. When I bought my first private plane in 2007, I turned to my company and said, all right, company, we need an extra 50,000 a month to handle this asset, of which now we as a team can fly show to show to show privately, keep all of our show gear on the plane, and we don't stop. And so we all leaned in as a company. But I say that specifically because most people think, oh, I have to make the money. No, the company has to make the money. So the patterns are make a lot of active income as much as you can and put it to work. And make sure you're overseeing, and not just the stock market. The stock market's an emotional arbitrage. It's a disaster. So put it into other real assets, technologies. Look at these medical technologies that are around us today that are killing it. Make a lot of money. So it's the activity of making and investing. And then I put the team around you to mind your taxes and trusts and corporate structures. And that's kind of how we roll.
Yeah, that's quite beautiful. I've never been a big fan of the stock market. I know people make a lot of money in the stock market, but I don't understand it. And so I've always, quite honestly, invested in myself. Things that I understand. You're like, let's start a heart hospital. Let's start a heart group. Let's build this. Let's start this startup. Let's invest in this company that I actually own a piece of or that I understand. So if people stay away from doing random things in a way and kind of stick with what they know or educate themselves in things that they love and then really start to invest in that channel, you can do a lot better. It's my basic feeling. So.
I'm going to say 100%.
Yeah.
And it gets you involved in the income side and the asset side, because both have to have your attention as the owner. And, and then I think just, a lot of people are doing real estate and there's a lot of good stuff, but this recession that's coming that, it's really been on the radar since July 2022. It's real.
Yeah.
It's going to hit really hard this fall.
Yeah.
The amount of foreclosures and bank withheld. They're going to call loans. They're going to call loans as part of our recovery.
Yeah.
And I don't think people realize how intense it's going to get.
Yeah.
So where's your offensive play for that?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, that's really interesting stuff. So when you see people, I guess you maybe have spoken to this, but when you see people making mistakes with regards to their taxes, is most of the issue the fact that they're paying personal tax as opposed to running everything through a company? Is that kind of the thought process there?
Well, that's the big one, is that when they start a company, so say it's just them and one entity or two entities, right? So there's three tax returns. They don't know how to take, say, for example, the phone and move it out of your personal spending over to a corporate expense. They don't know how to, like, the behavioral is what I saw during those years, working on the Rich Dad Poor Dad team, is the concepts are ever like all over, but as I always say, it's like a Rubik's Cube all on the floor and nobody has the how-to playbook. And that's what I feel like I did. As I said, so how do you take your car, your phone, your kids' college expenses, how do you take those and make them corporate expenses legally through corporate resolutions? So that's a huge part. So then they're not paying taxes because, like you said, they're paying too much personally. Then over here, they commingle because the company's not making enough money. So they keep dipping back in personally, and they don't do what's called interfamily loans. You can do interfamily loans, loan the money, use loans, not other distribution. So it's quite the debacle. And then they think they can do it on their own because there's this lovely thing called TurboTax. It's like, if you are even worth hundreds of thousands, you use a pro who studies 81,000 pages of code, not just checks some boxes on a quick little software and hit send. So your taxes are done. So it's sort of like a have to thing versus use it as a strategy to your life. I mean, you can really control. And a piece that no one talks about in taxes, Jeff, is the investing side. Because when you invest in things like real estate, gas and oil, aviation, mineral rights, water rights, those kind of, there's massive depreciation schedules that flow through that goes against that income. So it's not just how you're checking the boxes on the deductions and the expense deductions. It's what are you doing to invest to offset that, and even using debt to offset it is a whole advanced strategy.
Yeah, fascinating.
It's super fun. I love this stuff. If you can tell.
No, I can tell. No, it's super fun, right? For you, it's like a puzzle. What it is it's problem solving and puzzle solving in your brain, right? It's really what it is. It's a 4-dimensional puzzle, right? It's in 3D, but then it's over time as well, right? So it becomes really kind of fun and interesting.
Yeah.
So how do people get started with this? Because it still sounds intimidating. I suppose they can read your books, and I guess that's a good place to start. Is that what we're saying?
Yeah, we're going to give them access to my 5 best-selling, I have 5 New York Times, and then this one is a big Wall Street. We didn't hit New York Times with this little baby.
Make Your Kids a Millionaire.
Yeah, that one they actually have to go. I'm still in a big contract with McGraw-Hill, so if they go to makeyourkidsmillionaires.com, they also, when they buy from the site, not Amazon, you get $1,500. And my favorite gift inside of there is how to never pay your kids an allowance. And it comes with PDF task sheets. So if you pay your kid an allowance, just casual cash with no task association, or what I call contractual association, it changes kids. So at 4, I started never pay your kids an allowance. So they would make a task list and I'd say, how much money do you want to make a month? And don't think 4 and 5-year-old kids. I mean, if you've trained them that mom and dad are the bank, well, then you've got to start fixing that. But mine are, so you got to do stuff because you live here. And then what's the extra stuff you want to do? You can make as much money as you want. So I started that psychology at 4 with my kids. So how much do you want to make? You want to make 50 a month? You want to make 100? It comes summer. Do you want to make 1,000? I mean, my kids can turn it on and turn it off. Tutoring. They're both big math tutors. My son does a lot of accounting and tutoring prep for kids. My daughter does a lot of nannying, not babysitting. You make more money. I mean, they just know how to side hustle, and you teach them so they can design how much money they want to make. And if you pay them an allowance, it's like a paycheck with no defined tasks. So all you're doing is creating a robot, not a creative thinker.
Yeah, exactly.
A lot of fun with that. Yeah. So how to get started is I'm going to give a link to all my 5 ebooks. You can grab this book. And then I do every 3 weeks what's called the Millionaire Intensive. So we're going to give them some tickets if they want to come. It's 8 hours. It's 10 to 6 every Thursday, every 3 weeks. So the next one, June 29th, and then you can kind of follow every 3 weeks. The first 2 hours is corporate life conversation in thorough detail. And then we move towards how do you make more money? How do you use a database? How do you 10x income? What are some hacks on One of my biggest hacks is pre-orders. And I think it's obvious. I pre-order, I contract cash, I teach them strategies to solidify their cash flow. And then what's really fun is we put them into a marketplace. So for 3 hours from 3 o'clock to 6 o'clock, they actually get to buy and sell through Zoom. I teach them the structure of, my name's Laurel, I'm a money expert. What's one thing I could do for you today, Steve? Steve's going to tell me one thing to do. I'm going to say that's $20. And we're going to show them how to exchange money through this amazing thing called the internet and your phones. Mm-hmm. And how can you make money? Because people have such an old concept of selling, making money, and just being in a conversation of service is the way that I teach it. If you're serving somebody, you're going to get paid for it, right? And so how does that all work? So it's a really fun one-day event. It just gets people seeing all the aspects of how do you become a millionaire, and then they can go from there.
Yeah, that's outstanding. No, that's really, really great. Steve, what comes to mind as you're hearing all this? I see the lights kind of going off in your brain as you're listening to some stuff.
No, this is fascinating. I mean, the idea of me, the cross-country skis that I got back in January, I got it so I could live young for a lifetime. Mm-hmm. And running that through my business as opposed to.
Yep. Just pay yourself back. Do a little expense report to pay yourself back and have the company pay you back on a formal expense report. And now your skis are paid for. So have the company just pay you.
Yeah, it's brilliant. It's brilliant. My mind is turning in ways to pay for a brain tap for myself, and
there you go,
and a Nano V, and all so much of this tech that we have talked about here on the podcast that is on my wish list, and I am going to buy at some point. Running that through in a way, right. Yeah, I love it.
But it's a deduction.
Yeah. So you can do this just for the audience's sake. You can do this with your supplements. You can do this with your equipment. You can do this with your visits to, see your physician, your functional medicine doc. If you're working with us, you can structure this in a way where all this stuff can actually be run through a company in a way that, makes it quite a bit less expensive, depending on your tax bracket, and the state you live in. But it can be up over 50%, depending on where you live. So it can be pretty dramatic. It makes it all a lot easier.
Well, and we'll help get that down into the teens, if not the single-digit taxes. There's a way to do it.
Yeah,
I got great teams who do it.
Yeah,
it's just giving it some time and attention and knowledge. I won't buy into the narrative of, I have a mindset issue, I'm so scared. It's like you're scared because you don't know.
That's right.
If you knew, you'd be enthralled with it like I am, just like you are with longevity conversation. They're scared of it. They're scared of anything because you just don't know.
Sure.
So I'm really correcting, the narrative. It's not about weird psychology. It's you just don't know what to do. No one's been taught properly.
Yeah, and people have fear because they don't want to make a mistake, right? They don't want to get crosswise with the IRS. They don't want to get audited and owe a bunch of back taxes or have penalties or things like that, right? So I think, in our world, what we do is give people confidence that they can move forward, right? We unravel the knots so we can see what the problems are and then create a strategy so they can go forward with confidence. You're really doing the same thing. When you work with people, is giving them confidence that they can move forward and feel, I'm doing this, it's legal, I'm not getting crosswise with the IRS, I'm actually serving my kids and helping them for the future, creating this family construct in the family office. So yeah, that's a good thing. I think, if you're listening to this, I think reading the books and attending some stuff is great, but I think at some point you're probably going to want to plug in, to Laurel or a group or something like that, or somebody, and kind of think this through.
Once they go through the event, you can have some one-on-one time with our team. We do a lot of, we don't do a lot of group work because every family and every individual has a different situation. So like our group calls are usually topical in general, but then you are going to have to carve off and have one-on-one time. So we do have one-on-one teams. People frequently work with me. I'm in the Lake Tahoe, Reno area. So, they'll spend several hours just going through it all, laying it all out. So it's the lack of integration, though. I want to speak to that. So what we've done differently, and I really did take one out of the Rich Dad Poor Dad playbook, because they had the Rich Dad Poor Dad team. First time I've ever seen an integrated team, right? Diane Kennedy, Dolph DeRuse, Garrett Sutton, I was in the game, Keith Cunningham, all of us were there. The model wasn't put together financially, right? So it all kind of fell apart. But I knew when I started mine, I can send you out and say, all right, based on our call, you two, Steve and Jeff, go find a tax strategist like the one I'm talking about. Good luck.
Exactly.
Then the bigger problem is, are they going to talk to insurance people? Are they going to talk to your corporate compliance people? Are they going to talk to your trust people? They don't like to talk to each other. The financial services world is intentionally unintegrated and divided based on, if you have a license, Steve, this is all you get to say. And Jeff has license, all he gets to say. So if I was licensed, I'd be limited. So I stay unlicensed so I can just talk about everything. And I do a lot of parenting work, these conversations, but then I surround myself with the licensed experts. And we do have alternative financial planners. We have people for the market, real estate, crypto. I have all those experts around us. So they come to you, but they're all aligned to this conversation. Because the other problem is most people don't know enough to even integrate the team. It'd be like somebody going into your surgery center saying, okay, you do this to my heart, but I only want this much anesthetic and I only want this. Like, you don't get to decide. You don't know how to do a surgery. So why are you doing your financial surgery? I use that example a lot. It's like, well, why are you doing your own financial surgery? You have no idea what you're doing. And you're just hoping it's going to work when you would have the confidence it's going to work. And that's exactly right, Jeff. That's what I want to instill in people.
Yeah,
you can be confident, not scared.
Yeah, no, you're teaching me some things as well. I learned some things from your talk at Fabs and again today. So yeah, we'll definitely connect. I'm sure I could be doing some things better, which is always a good thing. I'm really excited for the audience to be able to start to integrate this, because I think it makes everything that they want to do that much more doable if they have a way to actually pay for it, and not only pay for what they're doing here, but then build this out for their family. I think it's just brilliant, quite honestly. So really, really appreciate you being here with us.
Thank you. It's been great to be here.
So how do people
look forward to the folks? There'll be a link in the show notes to grab the books. And the only kind of last action around the 5 books is read The Millionaire Maker first, no matter what. And then if you need income, there's 2 cash books. One's called Put More Cash in Your Pocket. The other's Cash Machine. If you need to focus on tax and investing, do Wealth Cycles. So, and then if you need Yes Energy, there's just a fun, big spiritual energy book. But do it in the order that you believe you need things, and you'll consume it better.
Perfect. Okay, great.